Yellow, this is Colin.
And Miles.
We're a little late for this, but we still wanted to talk about the Rebels season finale. So,
Thought it was pretty dandy.
yeah, pretty dandy is the word that's the word of the day. That's the
Dandy?
word of the day, dandy.
Alrighty then.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing that we have is questions, right, about what the future is going to hold.
Yes, I agree with you.
And I think Dave Filoni kind of intended that, and
So he could create future stories.
exactly.
Such as
The fact that we have Thrawn present and alive. We
he's
have
confirmed to be alive, as
Yes.
with Ezra.
And in that final scene, they mention Captain Pelion, which is his sidekick in the Legends story that Thrawn was first introduced in, which took place after Episode 6, where he then basically brings the New Republic to its knees. And if they're doing a show that takes place after Episode 6,
Be the
and they have
perfect plot.
Pelion, they have Thrawn, and they
would
have
Luke
whatever.
Skywalker.
They have Luke, they have Ahsoka.
Yeah, it's an incredible time period to be exploring.
Yeah, and it's something that we don't have a lot of. We just have pretty much Aftermath, and that's it.
Some Battlefront.
Yeah, some Battlefront. And I think that that's probably the most interesting era, because it's the Empire without an emperor.
Palpatine and Vader.
And even though there's the Operation Cinder, blah, 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 with bringing the Empire down itself, I think Thrawn represents... He has a big fleet. The entire Lothal fleet seems to be teleported away. And if he can use that should be a lot of stuff to use in the next show. And I think they could do something between Ahsoka and Luke. They could talk about Anakin. Ahsoka can maybe still have doubts about the Jedi. Luke can try to
That
go
could be one of
forward
the
with it.
One of the reasons why he gives up on the Jedi in the Force Awakens.
Yeah, Last Jedi. That, if they played their cards right, it'd have to be... They could help explain that, because that was a point of contention with some people. And, yeah, we could talk about just some things that we're glad that Rebels did or wrapped up in the end of the show. I was very glad that we got to see different types of Mandalorians in the show, different uses of the Darksaber and that sort of thing, instead of all the warriors being Death Watch and all the good guys being pacifists. I was glad that it was some sort of... You don't have to be a pacifist exactly
He
to
can be a Saw Gerrera.
Well, yeah, that is, I guess, yeah.
He's a good guy, technically.
Technically, yeah.
I love that guy. Good old Saw.
Yeah, good old Saw. And I was very glad with Rebels, with all the tie-ins that they had with Rogue One. Basically,
I
Saw...
love that we got a Krennic name drop.
Yes. Apparently, they were thinking of putting Krennic in a scene. But
That would be a bit too much. It wouldn't have
They had to
fit.
cut the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's a bummer. But, yeah, I was glad that we were able to have all that stuff. And one thing that we were kind of confused about was what Ahsoka has been doing since going into the World Between Worlds and then popping back out.
Well, I have a theory about that, Colin.
All right.
Funny you should mention that. I believe that when she was pulled in, she was pulled in right as Vader and her, were fighting,
Yeah.
But when she got out, that was 2 years in the future,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think there's two possibilities there. It could either be 2 years in the future, or it could be right after, as the temple was exploding. Maybe
And she
just
didn't go find him for whatever reason.
Well, either way, she
Actually,
waited
she wouldn't- she
5
would-
more years between.
Were they on
Rogue.
Avalon yet?
Were they on?
Were they on Avalon yet?
They were off Adelon by that time, and she had known about Adelon. She had been there.
Okay, so she would have gone there if she had
Yeah, but
gotten out during, right before she had been sent in.
yeah.
So I think it's the only option is...
Yeah, okay, so Dave Filoni had these Topps cards that he had at Celebration that kind of supposedly hinted at her journey. And at the end, they had the whole wolf door, which now makes sense, because that was what was in the episode. When that came out, that made no sense at all.
Ahsoka lives.
Yeah. But, Yeah, it seems to be she either couldn't get off the planet, she was trying to get some sort
Well,
of...
yeah, she didn't really have a ship, did
But
she?
I think it's also possible because remember Moria, what is the owl? That is the light side.
the owl.
It's the daughter.
Well, it's because the daughter saved her life with what was left of her life force in
TCW.
Clone Wars, yeah.
Yeah. But
The Mortis arc.
yeah, it seems like she knows that that's the daughter, which is cool. But also, I think that it would be an interesting thing if maybe her journey required her leaning deeper into the Grey Jedi thing to even teleport off the temple. Because if you remember, to open the temple, you have to have the open hand, which was connected to the daughter. She has that, light, which I guess that means light side. And to exit the temple, you need a closed fist, which was held by the sun, which I assume means dark side. So she maybe has to go a little bit darker to leave the temple. And so maybe that's part of her spiritual journey, and that's why she comes back looking like Gandalf, because now she's found some sort of enlightenment in the Force. And maybe that's where she and Luke can have disagreement in whatever the next show is. Maybe she can start a Force school, and then he can start one, maybe. And maybe that would raise some interesting theories, like would Ben Solo have operated better as a Grey Jedi and not fallen to the dark side, not been so seduced as easily if he had a foot in both pools?
Well, I think he wouldn't have been seduced so easily if he had just known Vader was his grandpa the whole time.
Well, apparently that's what made him turn to the dark side, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, but it's like, did your parents not tell you?
Well, because his parents didn't tell him, I think. They
guess.
lied to him about that.
But that's because they thought that he was edgy to begin with, and he hated that. Though, okay, recently, did you see this thing that apparently, this is really quick, Ben Solo in Bloodline, there's a written note that helps Leia escape a bombing that just says run, and apparently she says like no one writes notes anymore, but in The Last Jedi you can see Ben has a calligraphy set in his room, and so maybe he was getting involved with the First Order then, and they said we're going to blow up Leia, and then he sent her a note and saved her life. So that could show, like, I don't know, that could be part of the show.
We're not really
that
talking
could be an
about
interesting
Rebels at
part.
this point.
Yeah, we're not even talking about Rebels at this point. Let's get back to Rebels. How did we feel about Kanan?
So you know that from the start of Rebels, I had my disagreements with you. You really like Rebels.
I don't like it as much as the Clone Wars,
Well,
but
yeah,
yes,
who
I
does?
do like Rebels.
I think Rebels is a decent show with some very bad moments and some very good moments.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, for Kanan in particular, Kanan and Hera, I liked them throughout. I think Kanan's sacrifice at the end was super good. And, they talk about how that inspired Ezra to do his self-sacrifice, even though he didn't have to die at the end. And I think that sort of thing is also what inspired Ezra to not reach for his parents at the end when, Sheev was,
Palpatine,
taunting him.
Good old,
Yeah.
nice Grandpa Palpatine.
Yeah.
Your grandfather's Palpatine.
Yeah. He was just saying, it's fine, kid. Do it. Do it. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that, he needed that sort of self-example that Kanan sets, and that's kind of what Dave Filoni says. He says, Kanan doesn't exactly have to die because of Episode 6 and Luke needed a teacher, which is what everyone really thought. But he also needs to die to set an example for how to act and how to be, especially for Ezra. So I think that went really well. And I think that the way they freed, Lothal actually
That was cool.
was really good.
It was a good way to end the series. They
Yeah, and
didn't
it
end
makes
with
sense.
Scarif, they didn't
Yeah.
end it with Endor. They ended it exactly how they wanted to end it. It was focused not on the overall rebellion, but it was focused on this group of characters.
Yeah, and
their stories.
and
And they all got to finish up their stories nice and neatly. Kara, yeah.
Kara, their ship name.
I
Yeah,
just thought of that. Yeah.
yeah, they have a kid.
Yeah, they had a kid, and I thought that was pretty cool. I like that Zeb got to show Callus that he didn't wipe out the Lazat.
Yeah, I
The
thought that
Lazat
was
people.
good.
I think Sabine and Ahsoka are going to be big parts in.
Yeah, and
if
I
they-
think
if
whoever, what's his name? Jason Sindula.
Yeah, Jason
which is,
Sindula.
of course, a
I don't know-
reference
I
to
don't know.
Jason Solo from Legends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he and Ben, they're about the same age. Jason would be a
Jason's
little older. But yeah, I think that would be a
Well,
very
he'd be
interesting
like
thing if maybe one of
4 or
them was
5
trained
years
by
older,
Ahsoka,
actually.
one of them was trained by Luke, and we just get to see their paths.
He'd be
Something
like
of
4
that
or 5
nature.
years older than Ben, actually.
Yeah, but
'Cause-
they'd be in the same class, I guess, of Force users.
Same generation.
Yeah, same generation.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Damn
apparently Dave
millennials.
Filoni says that Ahsoka's look at the end of the show reflects her spiritual journey. And the first thing I thought was
She's Gandalf the
She has a
White.
staff. She's gone through some sort of challenge. But I think it also applies to Sabine, right? When okay, so Mandalorians, they paint their armor according to basically people they've lost, how they feel. And her armor kind of takes like a darker undertone. And I think
her hair,
that
too.
sort of has to do with like vengeance. That sort of has to do with mourning, stuff like that. And I think that will definitely tie in. So we're almost wrapped up, but
I mean, I thought it was a fantastic ending to a decent TV show.
and I thought it was a great ending to a great show, and glad Dave Filoni got to do it.
Bye.